Welcome everyone. My name is Justin Chugg, and as always, this is the Sales Hacks training series. We do this every 2 weeks for those of you who are just joining us for the first time today. Today's topic that we're going to be discussing is how to use a win-back strategy. Most of you are probably familiar with win-backs, but essentially win-backs are taking dead leads or old leads from vendors or referral partners and trying to bring them back to life. This particular strategy works really well with those of you who have a lead exchange set up because a lot of times it's hard for them to build the relationship of trust, and so handing off deals where there's not a lot of risk to share information about customers that they've had in the past are a good way to build that relationship of trust. If you haven't set up a lead exchange, you may want to review the call we did a few months ago on how to set that up. But just as a quick review, there's 3 types of lead exchanges that you'll want to set up. First of which is geographically based lead exchange, where you're partnering with other companies who offer the same types of products, but to different markets. In a similar fashion, there's a vertically based lead exchange, and this is where you offer the same types of products, but to different verticals. And the last and most common is an expertise-based lead exchange, where you're talking to the same type of customer, but offering different types of products. There's about 19 different members that you can have join your lead exchange, but for today's call, we'll be focusing a lot on vendor partners. But again, win-back strategies works with any lead exchange member, essentially taking some of their past customers or related customers and trying to build a momentum with them. But the reason why vendor partners are such a good fit in this scenario is because if they're a vendor partner, you're already selling their products, and so you want to sell additional products from them, and so taking some of their past customer list is a great way to start with this. So when it comes to win-back lists, there's a big difference between lists that you can purchase online and the win-back lists. And what we found, we've done some research, and that we found that win-back lists have 10 times the appointment ratio compared to traditional lists that you can buy online. And even though they may have good data, the problem is they're dead on arrival. There's nothing there. It's a cold list, and it's really hard to build appointments and have success with those types of lists, just because it's hard to start from ground zero. And so when you're working with a win-back list or a living list, it's much easier to overcome your greatest challenge, which is getting in the door. And so anytime you're doing any type of sales strategy, it always needs to involve a living list, which is essentially, there's a few examples here I'd like to run through, one of which is customers you may have worked with at a previous company, or maybe the neighbors of your existing clients. We found that geographic proximity is a great relationship builder and icebreaker. Also, the competitors of your customers. If you can generate referrals within your customers, that's another great resource. Lead exchange customers, so sharing customers within the lead exchange, which is the whole purpose of a lead exchange. And lastly, of course, win-backs. All of these different types of customer lists or prospects have this built-in appointment setting capability, which is almost as if when you use these types of lists, it's like hiring an inside sales team for you. Now, within the win-back space, which is really today's topic, there's 5 different types of win-backs. And we're going to loosen the definition of win-backs a little bit today because it's important to understand all the different possibilities and opportunities that exist within your referral partners and vendors' customer relationships. The most traditional and common type of win-back are the customers that they used to have. So for whatever reason, they lost a customer and it's gone. So that would be the first type of win-back. The second is customers that they almost won. So they were working on the opportunity and the customer, for whatever reason, didn't buy from them. This could be the fact that they wanted to hold off on purchasing. They chose a different vendor. But whatever the case may be, these are a great resource to work on. Another one is customers within multi-tenant buildings of their existing clients. Many vendors, like fiber providers, would be a great example for this, where you have a great asset in the building or any other type of geographically based product, and being able to sell services to other clients, building on the momentum and using the other client as an anchor is a great resource for you. Another great one is working with the competitors of your customers, of their customers. And so a lot of these companies in all of these scenarios have spent millions or billions of dollars, thousands of man hours, and have taken a lot of effort to acquire or at least get in front of these customers. And so your job in terms of creating a sales hack in order to essentially hack growth is to build on all of this momentum and huge investment that these vendors have already made in customers and talking to their neighbors and talking to their competitors and bringing them back to life, or even the fact that they spent, tens of thousands of dollars to get in front of one specific client and then they lost the deal. You can still build on that momentum. And so we're trying to capitalize on all of this effort that these vendors have made, and for whatever reason they fell short, and your job is to pick up the ball and keep going. The last type of win back would be actually selling services to existing clients. You'll find that there's a lot of vendors who lack the internal resources to cater to their existing clients. And so if they offer multiple products, but they've only sold one, there's a good opportunity for you to go in and sell additional products. It's also very common to have a group of customers in what they call orphaned accounts, and taking those and essentially trying to add additional services. So a lot of times they'll have account managers, but they're only dealing with the larger accounts, and everybody else gets essentially orphaned and let up and ignored completely. And so sometimes you may find some resistance on some of these latter types of customers. If you're dealing with customer competitors, a good place to start is you go to their website, check for case studies, check for logos that help that they've put on their website talking about who their customers are, and then running competitor checks on those companies to basically build on that momentum. And as you begin to gain trust with different accounts, you'll slowly be able to work your way into more accounts and earn enough trust to be able to upsell to their existing clients. So when it comes to win-backs, just to summarize everything that we've talked about, there's those 5 different types of win-back strategies. You can obviously talk to the past customers and try to bring them back to life. There's deals that they lost, and maybe the timing was off, and you can now re-engage those customers, customer neighbors, customer competitors, and also selling to existing clients, and essentially becoming that inside sales team or account management team that company lacks, or working with those accounts that are currently being ignored and adding additional value to the company. So when you're pulling one of these lists, typically you're going to start with the customers that were lost, because those are the ones that have the least amount of risk with the vendors. If you have a really good relationship with these vendors, they may be able to share with you some of these other risks, but usually it'll take a little bit of time and trust that you'll be able to develop based off of how well you do with those accounts. But you want to make sure that you get your list, you get the contact information, at least the last contact information that they had for the company, any account history that they may have had, billing, product details, and any notes or background information that they may have in order to help you become more effective. When you actually start working the opportunities, the main goal here is to actually use the branding of the vendor. So this is essentially what helps you get in the door, because you're using that as a reference point. And when you're starting to talk to the customer, you're not going to try to sell them right off the bat. What you want to do is you want to try to understand the context of the situation. Maybe it was just the wrong timing. Maybe the pricing was off. Maybe they were dissatisfied with the service. But gathering some of that information will help you be much more successful in the long run. So you don't want to jump the gun too much. You just want to build a little bit of momentum within these clients. It also, in order to build momentum with your vendors, it would be wise to create a report summarizing what you're finding around these clients. We'll talk about at the end of the call another type of report that we can provide you that essentially talks about what these customers have in common. And again, we don't want to try to sell them right off the bat. Again, this needs to be a process and not an event. Lastly, we want to make sure that we try to come up with strategy after our initial intel gathering, and try to come up with a strategy with the vendor about how we're going to tackle these opportunities. So maybe some of this was pricing, some of this was timing, And so trying to come up with maybe a free trial or a discounted program or understanding any types of changes that they've made internally that you can share with the client based off of what you found would be really helpful in those follow-up calls that you make with those clients. And lastly, it's really important that if you find that you're having success, which you should, you need to have the vendors invest in you. Because if you've come up with a formula that works, then it would be a no-brainer for them to take some of their marketing development funds and use that to grow you and your business and to help accelerate this process. So maybe they invest in helping you find personnel or buying lists or whatever it may be. But using the momentum that you build with the vendors, it makes perfect sense to take whatever success that you've had and expand upon that using their money since you're acquiring the same types of customers. So before we go into Q&A, I just wanted to highlight some of the tools that you'll need in order to execute some of these strategy points. So because this process is somewhat of it'll take some time to work with some of these accounts, you want to make sure that you're following and nurturing these opportunities. So if you go to ensabled.com/follow, you'll be able to plug in the company names and we'll give you a daily update about any changes taking place within those accounts. You can also look up customers, competitors at ensabled.com/related. You can find their neighbors at ensabled.com/tenant. You can build a commonality report at ensabled.com/common. If you're not familiar with the commonality report, what this does is it tells you what the different companies on those lists have in common. And so if you're so maybe there's a specific software or geography or some other type of element that these companies have in common that you can help point out to your vendor and say, look, these are all your lost deals. They happen to be in this specific market. Maybe something's happening in that market. And so this tool is smart enough where you can just drop in the company names and then it'll build this report for you. Also, when you're making the phone calls, it's helpful to have a background check on these companies. So you can run upsell reports. You just drop the names into that tool and you can generate lots of great reports about what the company uses in terms of technology, how many outages they've had, the key contacts, all their locations, and all that good stuff. So definitely run those reports before you make the phone calls, and you'll find that it's much more effective.